Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
Long before the youngest stars in the outer spiral arms had even ignited, there were whispers of something that lived between destruction and silence. The elders of many civilizations called it by different names: World Eater, Flame God, the Last Calamity. But across languages and species, one truth remained unchanged. Nothing survived it. Karzun was not a planet anyone visited. It was a warning, a charred sphere drifting through space. Its surface cracked like shattered glass, glowing faintly from the heat trapped beneath its crust. Storms of iron that circled it endlessly, turning its skies into a constant storm of red lightning. No water, no life, no signals. Only heat, only ruin. And at the center of that ruin it slept. Orbiting at a carefully calculated distance was a coalition perimeter fleet, a formation of warships so vast it could have conquered entire star systems. Yet here, they did not conquer. They watched. They waited. Inside Command Vessel Theta 9, tension hummed through the air like a live current. Status report. Commander Threx demanded, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the dim light of the control chamber. Perimeter stable, replied a technician with four jointed arms rapidly adjusting holographic displays. Thermal readings from the surface remained within predicted parameters. Another officer spoke, her voice layered with faint mechanical distortion. Seismic activity rising slightly in Sector 7. No breach indicators. Threx narrowed his luminous eyes. Defined slightly. A pause. Within tolerable extinction thresholds. That was how they measured things here, not in degrees or kilometers, in extinction potential. Every species in the coalition had lost something to the dragon. The Volari lost 3 colony worlds in a single rotation, reduced to molten debris. The Keth Dominion had sent an entire armada. Not one ship returned. Their final transmission was still studied in military academies. A shadow larger than our sun. Static. Silence. The humans had only fragments of records. Old, half-dismissed stories from early deep space probes that vanished without explanation. At the time, they hadn't even believed it. Now they were here, watching, learning, fearing. A massive holographic projection dominated the center of the command chamber, a live feed of Karzun's surface. At first glance, it looked still, but the longer you stared, the more you noticed subtle movements. A slow rise, a faint shift, like the planet itself was breathing. Magnify Sector 12, Threx ordered. The image zoomed in, cutting through layers of atmospheric interference. The surface, there was a vast canyon of blackened stone, its edges glowing faintly as rivers of magma pulsed beneath. And there, a shape, impossibly large, curled among the ruins of a world it had destroyed long ago. Even at this distance, its presence was undeniable. Jagged spines ran along its back like a mountain range. Its wings, folded tightly, could have eclipsed entire cities. Its scales shimmered with a dull, metallic glow, as if forged from the core of a dying star. The dragon remains dormant, the technician said quietly. No one relaxed. Dormant did not mean safe. Dormant meant waiting. Reminder, Threx said, turning to address the room. Our objective is containment, not engagement. We are not here to provoke it. A murmur of agreement passed through the crew. They all knew the protocols. Do not descend below safe orbit. Do not transmit high-energy signals toward the surface. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt contact. Those rules were written in the aftermath of countless failures. The dragon did not negotiate. It did not communicate. It destroyed. Then, a sharp tone cut through the chamber. Not loud, but wrong. Every head turned. Unidentified signal entering perimeter. When the sensor officer said, voice tightening. Threx stiffened. Clarify. Small craft detected at outer boundary. Trajectory indicates descent vector toward surface. The room fell into stunned silence. That is not possible. Another officer snapped. All access routes are locked. No vessel could pass undetected. And yet, the sensor officer replied, it has. A new image flickered onto the main display. Tiny, insignificant, A single ship, no larger than a shuttle, drifting steadily toward the burning world below. No escort, someone whispered. No defensive signatures. No weapons, added another. Threx stepped closer, his gaze sharpening. Identify origin. The system processed, paused, then displayed the result. Human. The word echoed through the chamber like a shockwave. Impossible, one officer said. Humans are barely classified as a mid-tier spacefaring species. They would not approach Karzun, not knowingly. Threx's voice cut through the rising panic. Scan for life forms. A beat, then single occupant. Adult. Threx demanded. Another pause. The answer came softer this time. Negative. A flicker of confusion spread through the crew. Then what? The censor officer swallowed. A juvenile. Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Somewhere, deep beneath the planet's cracked surface, something shifted. The dragon stirred. And above it, a small human ship continued its quiet, impossible descent. The unauthorized vessel was never meant to survive a descent like this. It was too small, too fragile, too human. Its outer hull rattled violently as it pierced through the upper atmosphere of Karzun. Sheets of fire wrapped around it, clawing at its surface like living things. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit in frantic bursts of red. Hull temperature, critical. Structural integrity, compromised. Autopilot, offline. Inside, however, there was no panic. A small pair of hands gripped the controls, not tightly, not fearfully, but with quiet determination. Lila leaned forward in her seat, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration. Okay, you've got this, she whispered, more to the ship than to herself. The vessel lurched sideways as a wave of thermal turbulence slammed into it. Hey! Easy, she said, tapping one of the panels like it could hear her. We practiced this. The ship responded with a protesting groan. High above, the Coalition fleet tracked every second of the descent. It has entered the thermosphere, a technician reported. Heat levels exceed survival thresholds for vessels of that class. Predict time to disintegration, Commander Threx ordered. 30 seconds. The room held its breath. 29, 28. But the vessel didn't break apart. Instead, a faint shimmer flickered across its surface, an improvised thermal shield, uneven and unstable, but somehow holding. What is that? One officer murmured. Unknown modification, another replied. Design does not match standard human engineering. Threx's gaze sharpened. This was not authorized, he said quietly. This was built. Inside the cockpit, Lila adjusted a loose wire that sparked faintly beside her seat. Don't worry, she told it. You're doing great. The ship dropped sharply, gravity pulling it toward the scorched surface below. Through the front viewport, Karzun came into full view. It wasn't just a planet. It was a graveyard. Vast plains of blackened rock stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by rivers of glowing magma that pulsed like veins beneath the crust. Towering formations of jagged stone rose like the bones of something long dead. And everywhere, scars. Deep, violent scars carved into the world itself. Lila's expression softened. Oh, she breathed. Not in fear. In sadness. Altitude critical. The ship's failing system crackled. I know, she said gently. A canyon opened beneath her. A massive split in the planet's surface, wide enough to swallow entire cities. Heat shimmered above it in waves, distorting everything. That looks like a good place, Lila decided. The ship disagreed, violently. It shook, alarm screaming as one of the stabilizers failed completely. Okay, not perfect, she admitted, but we can still land. She pulled the manual controls. The vessel tilted, dipped, then dropped. From orbit, the fleet watched in horror. It's losing control. Impact imminent. Brace for her. The ship vanished briefly in a burst of ash and flame as it plunged into the canyon. Seconds passed. Too many seconds. Then, a signal. Weak, but present. It survived, the sensor officer said, disbelief creeping into their voice. On the surface, dust settled slowly around the wrecked landing site. The ship lay tilted against a jagged rock formation, one wing partially melted, its hull scorched and smoking. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft hiss. The hatch opened. A small boot stepped out onto the blackened ground. Lila emerged, adjusting the oversized helmet of her patched-together suit. It was clearly not standard issue. Pieces of different designs fused together, scratched, repaired, and modified countless times. But it worked. She took a careful step forward. The ground crunched beneath her feet, brittle like burned glass. Above her, the sky churned in deep reds and blacks, lightning flickering silently through thick clouds of ash. "It's louder than I thought," she said quietly. Not with sound, but with presence. Far in the distance, something moved. At first, it was easy to mistake it for shifting terrain, a ripple in the landscape, a distortion in the heat. But then it happened again, slower, heavier, deliberate. Lila noticed. She turned her head slightly, squinting through her visor. "Oh," she said. There was no fear in her voice, no hesitation, just recognition. Above, alarms began to spike across the Coalition fleet. Massive energy signature detected. Source confirmed. Central life form. "The dragon is waking." Commander Threx's voice cut through the chaos. All ships maintain position. No sudden movements. But the child... "We cannot intervene," Threx snapped. Any aggressive action could trigger it. The truth hung heavy in the air. They were helpless. On the surface, the ground trembled. Not violently. Not yet, but enough. Dust lifted in soft clouds around Lila's boots as a deep, rhythmic vibration pulsed through the canyon. Something immense was shifting beneath layers of stone and time. Lila didn't step back. Instead, she took a step forward. Then another. "Hi!" she called out softly, her voice small against a vast, broken world. The movement in the distance stopped. For a moment, everything held still. Then, the canyon darkened. A shadow stretched across the ground, growing larger and larger until it swallowed Lila completely. Slowly, impossibly, a colossal shape began to rise. Stone cracked and slid away as the creature unfolded itself in the world it had long ago destroyed. A head the size of a mountain lifted into view. Eyes like burning suns opened, and they locked onto her. Above, across dozens of ships, one realization spread like a shockwave. The dragon was not just awake. It was aware, and the first thing it saw was a small human child standing alone before it. The first thing the dragon felt was confusion, not anger, not hunger, not the ancient, instinctive urge to destroy that had defined its existence for millennia. Confusion, because the small figure standing before it did not behave like the others. Its massive head rose higher, dislodging entire slabs of rock that tumbled into the canyon below. Each movement reshaped the landscape. Heat radiated from its body in waves so intense the air itself seemed to ignite. Its eyes vast, burning orbs, focused, locked, studied. The child did not run. Above, the Coalition fleet erupted into overlapping voices. Energy levels rising. Thermal output increasing. This matches pre-attack conditions. Prepare for planetary discharge. Commander Threx gripped the edge of the command platform. "Hold formation," he ordered, though even his voice carried strain. "Do not engage." "But the child will be vaporized." "Yes," Threx said quietly. No one argued after that. On the surface, Lila stood very still. The dragon's gaze pressed down on her like gravity. Ancient, heavy, unfathomable. If it chose to strike, she would not even have time to feel it. But she didn't step back. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. "Oh," she said softly. Up close, the dragon was different. Not just terrifying. Tired. The dragon lowered its head. Slowly, carefully, not out of mercy, but curiosity. Its enormous snout descended toward the canyon floor, each breath a roaring furnace that sent us spiraling into the air. The ground beneath it melted and reformed with every exhale. Still it did not attack. It stopped just above her, close enough that one movement, one twitch, would erase her completely. Its eyes shifted, focusing more precisely, examining, measuring, waiting. Lila blinked up at it through her visor. "Hi," she said again, a little clearer this time. The dragon did not understand the word, but it understood the tone. No fear, no threat, no challenge. That was new. Fragments of memory stirred within the ancient creature. Not images, not thoughts, sensations, flashes of fire, swarms of ships, weapons striking at scales, pain, rage, silence after destruction. It had learned long ago everything that approached it meant harm. Everything burned, everything ended, so it burned them first, always. But this one did not burn, did not attack, did not flee. It simply stood there, above. The fleet sensors struggled to interpret what they were seeing. The dragon has ceased escalation. That is not possible. No plasma buildup detected. No strike pattern forming. Commander Threx stared at the display, unblinking. Then what is it doing? No one had an answer. On the ground, Lila took a small step forward. The dragon reacted instantly. A low rumble built deep within its chest, a sound that had once preceded the annihilation of entire worlds. The air vibrated. The canyon walls trembled. In orbit, alarm screamed. Energy spike. This is it. But Lila stopped. She didn't retreat. She didn't panic. She simply raised her hand slightly, palms open. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said gently. The rumble faltered. Not gone, but uncertain. The dragon leaned closer, closer than before. Its massive eye now filled Lila's entire world, an ocean of molten light, ancient beyond comprehension. For a moment, neither moved. Two beings from entirely different corners of existence, suspended in a fragile, impossible stillness. Then Lila smiled, a small, simple smile, the kind that had nothing to do with strategy or survival or fear, just kindness. And then she did something no being in the galaxy had ever done. She stepped forward, right up to the dragon's snout, so close now that the heat should have overwhelmed her suit, so close that even the smallest movement from the creature would end her. From orbit, multiple officers turned away, unable to watch. "This is where it happens," someone whispered. Lila stood on her toes, reached up, and gently pressed her lips against the dragon's nose. The universe seemed to stop. No sound, no movement, no breath. Even the storms above Karzun appeared to pause, as if reality itself was unsure how to proceed. Inside the dragon, something broke. Not violently, not destructively, but quietly. A fracture in something older than memory. Its body went still, completely still. The rumble in its chest faded, not into silence, but into something softer, lower, almost uncertain. It did not pull away. It did not strike. It did not burn. Above, the coalition fleet descended into stunned disbelief. No reaction. Confirm, no hostile response. Rechecking sensors. This cannot be accurate. Commander Threx did not speak. He simply watched. On the surface, Lila lowered herself back onto her feet. She looked up at the enormous creature, completely unafraid. "You look like you needed that," she said. The dragon blinked. Slowly. Once. The first recorded instance of the creature performing any motion not tied to aggression. Then, impossibly, it exhaled, not as a weapon, but as a breath. A deep, rumbling release that washed over the canyon. Not scorching, not destructive, but warm, almost gentle. Lila giggled. The sound echoed strangely against the shattered world. "That's better," she said. And in orbit, across every ship, every species, every system, a single, undeniable truth settled in. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy had just chosen not to kill. At first, no one in the coalition fleet spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing they could say made sense anymore. Every model they had built, every prediction, every warning etched into their history, all of it had just failed. "Confirm status," Commander Threx finally said, his voice quieter than before. A technician responded, almost mechanically. "Primary entity shows no hostile behavior. Thermal output decreasing. Energy reserve stabilizing." Another officer added, disbelief creeping through every word. "The dragon is at rest." That word did not belong in any report involving Karzun. Rest. It felt wrong. Impossible. On the surface. The change was subtle, but undeniable. The dragon's immense form, once coiled with latent destruction, began to settle. Its wings relaxed slightly, their edges no longer crackling with residual heat. The molten glow beneath its scales dimmed from blinding intensity to a softer, steady radiance. It lowered itself, not collapsing, not retreating, but easing down, like something that had carried a weight for far too long. Lila watched closely. "You're tired," she said softly. The dragon's eye shifted toward her again. There was still power there, limitless, terrifying power, but something else had taken its place beside it. Something quieter, something that had not existed before. High above, the fleet's observation system struggled to categorize what they were witnessing. "Recording all data," one officer said. "Behavioral patterns do not match any known aggression cycle." "Could this be a dormant phase?" another suggested. "No," came the reply. "Dormancy does not include interaction." They hesitated before saying the word. Interaction. Commander Threx stepped closer to the main display. "Focus on the human," he ordered. The image sharpened. There she was, small, fragile, sitting beside the most dangerous being in recorded history, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. On Karzun's surface, Lila carefully lowered herself onto the warm, glass-like ground. She sat cross-legged near the dragon's massive snout, her reflection faintly visible in the cooled obsidian beneath her. "You know," she said, "everyone up there's really scared of you." The dragon did not respond, but it did not look away. Lila reached out again, this time more casually, and placed her hand against one of its scales. The surface was warm, not burning, alive. "You didn't have to scare them," she continued, "but I think maybe they scared you first." The dragon's chest rose slowly, then fell, a deep controlled breath. Fragments stirred again within it, not just destruction this time, but before that, before the fleets, before the weapons, there had been silence, endless, empty silence. A universe that passed it by, civilizations that saw it and chose fear, contact that always ended the same way. Attack, pain, retaliation, loneliness. The dragon lowered its head further, until, for the first time in its existence, it rested, not in hiding, not in preparation, but in stillness. Lila smiled. "There you go," she whispered. She leaned gently against its snout, her small figure barely noticeable against its immense form. "I get it," she said quietly. "Being alone, it's not nice." In orbit, something unexpected happened. No alarm sounded. No warnings flashed. But one by one, ships began to power down their weapon systems. Not by command, not by protocol, but by choice. "They're standing down," a technician said, surprised. Commander Threx noticed. He did not object. "Maintain observation," he said instead. Hours passed. Karzun did not erupt into fire. The dragon did not rise in fury. No fleets were destroyed. No worlds ended. Instead, the storms above the planet began to calm. Not completely, but enough. The violent lightning softened. The ash clouds thinned just slightly, allowing faint traces of starlight to pierce through for the first time in centuries. "This is unprecedented," one officer whispered. "Environmental stabilization, linked to the entity's reduced activity. Are we witnessing a planetary shift?" Commander Threx watched silently. Then, almost to himself, he said, "No." A pause. "We are witnessing understanding." On the surface, Lila yawned. It had been a long journey, a very long day. "You don't have to stay awake," she told the dragon. "I'll still be here." The dragon's eye remained open for a moment longer, watching her, studying, as if trying to understand how something so small could change something so vast. Then, slowly, it closed its eye. Across the fleet, multiple systems registered the same result. The entity has entered a low-activity state. Heart rate decreasing. Energy output minimal. Someone hesitated before saying it. "It's sleeping." No one corrected them. Lila leaned back slightly, resting against the dragon's warm scales. The heat was comforting now, like sitting beside a quiet fire. She looked up at the sky, at the distant ships, at the stars beyond them. "They're not so scary," she said softly. "They just don't understand you yet." Far above, Commander Threx finally spoke one last time. "Send a transmission to all Coalition vessels." The crew straightened. "Message content, Commander?" He watched the small human child on the screen, then the sleeping giant beside her, and said, "Stand down." And for the first time in recorded galactic history, the beast of Karzun was not feared, not attacked, not hunted. It was simply allowed to rest. And beside it, a little human girl kept watch, proving something the entire galaxy had failed to learn, that even the deadliest creature in existence might only have needed someone who wasn't afraid to be kind.